Okay, so for those on the recording, I just said the bracha and remembered to start recording. So don't think that I didn't say the bracha. So we left off last time with talking about whether you can hire a Gentile to do work for you, and that is medical for medical attention. Can you hire a Gentile doctor to take care of you? So we left off at this red S. The Gemara analyzes a situation in which one may receive medical attention from Gentiles. Okay, so we're going to look at the circumstance where you can, and why is it that sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and some say that it was Rav Chisda who says that Rabbi Yochanan says. Okay, so the debate is which rabbi of the time of the Talmud is quoting Rabbi Yochanan, but it's both of them are quoting Rabbi Yochanan. If there is, then Rabbi Yochanan was a transitional rabbi of a generation between Mishnah and Talmud rabbis. Okay, if there is uncertainty as to whether a patient will live through his ailment or die from it, the patient may not be treated by Gentile doctors due to the concern that a Gentile doctor may kill him. But if it is certain that he will die from his affliction if he does not receive medical attention, the patient is treated by them, as it is possible that a Gentile physician will save him. Okay, so the first idea that the rabbis are bringing forward is this one, this teaching of Rabbi Yochanan, so that who's saying that if someone is on, it's unclear if the person's on their deathbed or they're going to recover. If that's the situation, then you cannot hire a Gentile physician because it's assumed the Gentile is going to kill the patient. So remember, the default for the rabbis is that the Gentiles are out to get us, and not just out to get us, but out to kill us, and whatever possibility that they can find. So that's why you don't want to have Gentile people circumcising Jewish babies without people there present for him doing it, right? To make sure that the Gentile doesn't take advantage and kill the baby. So the same idea, if the person's on their what could be a deathbed, then the Gentile could take advantage of that and treat the patient in a way that'll ensure that this Jew will die. But if it's certain that he's going to die, and if it's certain that he will die from his affliction if he does not receive medical attention, the patient is treated by them as it's possible that a Gentile physician will save him. If it's a case where the person's going to die anyway, unless they receive medical attention, so you have no choice in the matter, then you can hire a Gentile to take care of him because maybe the Gentile will save him. So there is a halacha here, right? There's an H back here. If there's uncertainty as to whether a patient will live through his ailment or die. So the halacha is uncertainty as to whether a patient will live through his ailment or die. If there's a possibility that an ailing person will survive his affliction without medical attention, he may not be treated by a Gentile. If there's no doubt that he will die without treatment, he may be seen by a Gentile physician. So we have to understand throughout the generations how rabbis are understanding this. So Rabbi Yochanan, he's around 250 CE, so like 1800 years ago, and the Gemara is the next 300 years of rabbis talking about it. And this source is from Maimonides, and that's 500 years after that. So, or 600 years after that. So into the Middle Ages, there's still fear of Gentiles. Now today, there isn't fear of that necessarily. I mean, despite the rapid exponential rise in anti-Semitism in this country, it hasn't gotten to a point where anybody in the Jewish community is saying, don't go to the hospital or any doctor's office that are Gentiles. We're not in that situation here. But there could have been some places just a little while ago that it would have been dangerous for Jews to be treated by non-Jews. So this isn't just a historic kind of conversation. Elements of it could still be around today in some parts of the Jewish world. Okay, so the Gemara challenges. So this is the idea, right? If there's uncertainty whether a patient's going to live or die, then don't trust the Gentile. If it's certain he's going to die unless he's treated, then you can be treated by a Gentile. So the Gemara challenges, even if it's certain that the patient will die if he's not treated, nevertheless, there is value in temporal life. That is, it is preferable for the Jew to live as long as his ailment permits, rather than risking a premature death at the hands of a Gentile physician. Okay, so the Gemara is saying we should never trust a Gentile. And there is value in temporal life, which the Hebrew is chaye sha'ah. That is the now, life of now, short term. If you're alive now, there's value to that life now. And even if you might be on your deathbed, value of life now supersedes the fear of a Gentile killing you. So so against Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, the Gemara is saying, no, we should never, ever allow a Gentile physician to take care of us, because there is chaye sha'ah. Okay, there is temporal life. So that is, it's preferable for the Jew to live as long as his ailment permits, rather than risking a premature death, right? So the Gemara explains, we are not concerned with the value of temporal life when there is a possibility of permanent recovery. And therefore, it's preferable to receive medical attention from a Gentile despite the risk involved. I think what they're saying is that initially they're challenging, shouldn't there be some value to temporal life? And that should supersede this concern. And the Gemara is explaining, no, we're not concerned with chaye sha'ah. Better to have, when there's a possibility of permanent recovery, better to have a Gentile take care of us. So in other words, what the Gemara is throwing at Rabbi Yochanan, maybe Yochanan isn't considering temporal life, this concept of chaye sha'ah. Maybe Yochanan hadn't thought of that. So let's bring that into this conversation. And the Gemara is explaining even that idea is not that legal concept of life now is not one to discount a Gentile taking care of you if it's an emergency. Okay, so the Gemara asks, and from where do you say that we're not concerned with the value of temporal life? So this idea of chaye sha'ah, how is that not a consideration in this case? Why shouldn't we be concerned with life right now, no matter how tenuous it is? Why isn't that an issue as we're discussing whether a Gentile can take care of you or not? Because shouldn't the idea of Gentiles potentially killing you be the overarching concern? As it is written with regard to the discussion held by the 4 lepers left outside a besieged city. So there's a story. The Haftarah for There are two portions in Leviticus which some say are the worst portions in the entire Torah, Tazria and Mitzvah. They talk about skin ailments mainly, what's translated as leprosy, but it's some other kind of skin condition that makes one ritually impure. And that condition then forces the sufferer. Let's just by just easier, just refer to that person as a leper, because that's just the traditional translation, but understanding that it's not leprosy. The leper has to be outside the community, suffering this ritual impurity until they're cured. And so the fact that they can be cured, that the skin ailment can go away, means it's not leprosy. So a Kohen has to keep on inspecting the rash to see whether it has been cured or not. So in the meantime, the leper is isolated from the rest of the community. So there's a story in the book of Kings, second book of Kings, that is the Haftorah for one of those portions. Okay, and that these 4 lepers are outside of the city, Jews, and they see the Assyrian army approaching, and somehow a miracle is performed through them. That the sound of these 4 lepers, so I should say they're hungry. They're outside the city. The Assyrians have besieged the city, right? And these lepers are outside. So if they go inside the city to escape the Assyrians, they're going to die of starvation. If they go to the Assyrians, they're going to die, right? So whatever it is, they're going to die, these lepers, not from leprosy, but from starvation. So they approach the Assyrian army to see if the Assyrian army will give them food. Their approach, God transforms these 4 people's approach as if the sound of the 4 of them walking to the Assyrian encampment makes it sound like, God makes it sound like a huge army is approaching. Okay, so if you picture this, 4 straggling, frail lepers are walking to an Assyrian army encampment. As they're walking, you can't even hear them walk, but God makes it sound like a huge, huge army is approaching. That causes fear in the Assyrian encampment, and the Assyrians run away. And the city is saved from these by means of these 4 lepers. Okay, the issue here is the choice. The issue in our discussion is the Assyrians are the Gentiles. What should these lepers do to escape starvation? Should they have gone to the Assyrian army, Gentiles, for help? Okay, so that's the background. So from where do you say that we're not concerned with the value of temporal life? As it is written with regard to the discussion held by 4 lepers left outside a besieged city. If we say, that is, the lepers are saying to themselves, we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there, right? So the first part of the verse says, we're hungry. The Assyrian army is on one side of us. The besieged Israelite city from where we are isolated is dying of starvation. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to die? Are we supposed to go into the city and die? And if we sit still here, the verse goes on, we also will die, right? So we're going to die by the Assyrians, or we're going to die of famine in the city. So whatever we do, we're going to die. Now, therefore, come, and let us fall unto the host of the Arameans. If they save us alive, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall but die. So let's go to the Arameans. It's another term for the Assyrians. Let's give ourselves up to them. Maybe they'll have mercy on us and take us prisoner and give us some food, and we won't die. But if they kill us, well, we're going to die anyway. So what difference does it make? Okay, so the starving lepers decided to risk premature death rather than waiting to die of starvation. The Gemara asks rhetorically, but isn't there temporal life to be lost? In which case it would be preferable for the lepers to remain in their current situation. In other words, you're alive now. Why risk the fact that you are alive now by giving yourself up to the Assyrians, right? So that's Chaye Sha'ah. You cannot. So this also raises a question, by the way, for end of life discussions, right? Can you refuse? If you are on your deathbed, are you allowed to refuse? Are you allowed to sign a DNR, a do not resuscitate order? Okay, so those of us who are familiar with end of life and healthcare proxies and the like, signing a DNR is something acceptable to do if you know that you're signing it at a time. The best time to sign a DNR is when you are alive and healthy and of sound mind. And you're signing this healthcare proxy so that your family members don't have to make decisions for you. And also, the ideal would be that you make these decisions about DNR and other health decisions with your family, so that the family knows, God forbid, if you're in a hospital, you can't have a conversation at that time, what your wishes are. Okay. That also, you have to let your doctors know that you have this, so that the doctors in the hospital and the nurses know what to do and what not to do. So the question is, if you are alive, are you allowed to have a DNR? Most Jewish authorities today, especially in a non-Orthodox world, allow these decisions to make, despite the fact that the person is alive. All right, so the idea of Chaye Sha'ah, being alive in this moment, you're allowed to say, but in this moment, I am dying of this cancer. And I know that within 2 weeks, I'm going to be dead. What's the point in having another chemotherapy treatment? It's not going to do any good, right? So decisions like this are allowed to be made when it's certain from medical staff and medical professionals that you are terminal. Okay, so the question the rabbis are asking, are the lepers allowed to give themselves up to the Arameans, to the Assyrians, despite the fact that they're alive now, even though it's certain they're going to die, right? So that's like the situation. Is it not apparent that we are not so? But isn't there temporal life to be lost, in which case it would be preferable for the lepers to remain in their current location? Rather, is it not apparent that we are not concerned with the value of temporal life? So in other words, the fact that they did go to the Assyrians, and the fact that Rabbi Yochanan taught that you can go to a Gentile for treatment if there's no other recourse, both cases teach us that temporal life is not a legal consideration. Okay, we're following? Any questions or comments about this? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So the story was that God scared off the Assyrians when they did this. So wouldn't that be a binding kind of lesson to say, yeah, it's okay to do this?
Yes. So that the fact that God, exactly right, Steve, the further reinforces the message that Chaye Sha'ah, temporal life, is not the issue. In other words, if God wanted to teach us, right, and the rabbis are, by studying Mishnah and Gemara, the rabbis are trying to ascertain God's word and what God's truth is. They're trying to understand, by teaching the law, that the law is the truth that God wants us to follow. Okay, so the fact that God caused a miracle to happen through the lepers when they decided to go to the Assyrians, God is affirming their choice. And therefore, God is affirming that in this situation, an end of life situation where it's clear you're going to die anyway, that Chaye Sha'ah, temporal life, is not a legal consideration. That doesn't trump making some other choice. Okay, so the Baraita relates an incident relating, oh no, and then so the Gemara raises an objection from a Baraita. A person may not engage in dealings with heretics, and one may not be treated by them, even in a case where it's clear that without medical attention, one will experience only temporal life. So it's one thing for Gentiles to allow Chaye Sha'ah, temporal life, to be superseded by being treated by Gentiles. It's another to be treated by a heretic. So a heretic is a Jew who goes to the dark side, okay? A Jew who isn't following rabbinic Judaism anymore. That's a heretic. So it's worse to go to a heretic than it would be to go to a Gentile. Okay, so the Baraita relates an incident illustrating this point. There was an incident involving Ben Dama. The personality, there's a P there. So right here, personalities, Ben Dama in the Jerusalem Talmud, the full name of this sage is cited as Elazar ben Dama. Apparently he was known simply as Ben Dama because he did not merit receiving ordination. Elsewhere, it's indicated that Ben Dama was a close disciple of his uncle, Rabbi Ishmael, from whom he received many answers to his inquiries. Okay, so Rabbi Ishmael is one of the great sages, contemporary of Rabbi Akiva. And Ishmael and Akiva had different styles about interpreting the Torah. Akiva says that you can interpret every letter, and in fact, every decoration on every letter is something to derive Jewish law from. And Ishmael says, no, Torah spoke in the language of people, and so unique things, every letter, every scribble is not worthy of interpretation. So just pointing out how important a Rabbi Ishmael was. So Ben Dama is Ishmael's nephew, okay? So his sister's son. And so a snake bit him. So his nephew Ben Dama was bitten by a snake. And following the attack, Yaakov of the village of Sechania, who was a heretic, so this is in the small print, okay? So that means Rashi had to add to us that Yaakov of Sechania was a heretic, even though the story doesn't say exactly at this point that he was. And not only was a heretic, so in this context, a heretic means a disciple of Jesus the Nazarene. Okay, so the early Christians were Jews who were followers of Jesus. Okay, so a Jew who was a follower of Jesus was a heretic, and Yaakov of Sechania was one of these Jewish Christians. So Ishmael's nephew Ben Dama is bitten by a snake. Yaakov of Sechania came to treat him, but Rabbi Ishmael did not let him do so. And Ben Dama said to him, so in other words, somehow Ishmael was there with his nephew. The heretic was there too. So Yaakov wanted to treat him, but Ishmael did not let him treat his nephew. And Ben Dama said to him, Rabbi Ishmael, my brother, let him treat me, and I will be healed by him. And I will cite a verse from the Torah to prove that accepting a medical treatment from a heretic is permitted in this situation. But Ben Dama did not manage to complete the statement before his soul departed from his body, and he died. So he wanted to teach his uncle Torah to prove that he could be treated by this heretic for this snake bite. And while he was trying to prove it, he died. So the story goes on. Rabbi Ishmael recited with regard to him, fortunate are you, Ben Dama, as your body is pure and your soul departed in purity, and you did not transgress the statement of your colleagues who would state the verse, and who breaks through a fence, a snake shall bite him. That is, one is punished for ignoring an ordinance of the sages. This incident indicates that it's not permitted for one to accept medical treatment from a heretic, even if it's clear that without it, he will live only a short while. Okay, so Chaye Sha'ah is not an issue for being treated by a Gentile, but it is a factor in saying not to be treated by a heretic. So there's a note there. Your soul departed in purity. Ben Dama's last word was permitted, which is an expression of righteousness and purity. Others explain that Ben Dama's purity is expressed in the fact that he died without transgressing the will of the sages. Or simply, he was willing to have a halachic discussion with his uncle, and he died while having a halachic discussion, and so that's the purity that he died in. Okay.
Do we know
Yes.
what Kohelet's after here?
Kohelet, and who breaks through a fence, a snake shall bite him, from Ecclesiastes 10.
It doesn't say.
So what is the context of that verse? Let me see. Just here. Ecclesiastes 10. 10:8. Dead flies turn the perfumer's ointment fetid and putrid, so a little folly outweighs massive wisdom. A wise man's mind tends toward the right hand, a fool's towards the left. A fool's mind is also wanting when he travels, and he lets everybody know he's a fool. If the wrath of verse 4, if the wrath of a Lord flares up against you, don't give up your post, for when wrath abates, grave offenses are pardoned. Here is an evil I have seen under the sun, as great as an error committed by a ruler. Folly was placed on lofty heights, while rich men sat in low estate. I have seen slaves on horseback and nobles walking on the ground like slaves. 8. He who digs a pit will fall into it. He who breaches a stone fence will be bitten by a snake. He who quarries stones will be hurt by them. Okay, so just this kinds of work, menial work, gets you into trouble. Okay. Okay, but obviously the book of Ecclesiastes and other books like that can be grossly taken out of context to teach a life lesson. So breaking through the fence, that is leaving Judaism and becoming a heretic, a snake shall bite him. So that is if you are treated by a heretic, then you're going to die from this snake bite. Okay, the Gemara explains. So why is it that being treated by a heretic is a no-no, but being treated by a Gentile is okay? So the Gemara explains heresy is different, as it is enticing. In other words, it's prohibited to accept medical treatment from a heretic, as one might come to be drawn after his heresy. By contrast, receiving medical attention from a Gentile is permitted if it is certain that one will die if he's not treated. So you'd be tempted by the person's heresy, but you're not tempted by the Gentile's paganism. So that's not an issue. So there's a halacha here. Heresy is different. It's prohibited to be treated by a heretic in all cases, lest others be drawn after his beliefs. Nevertheless, a Jew may accept treatment from a healer who provides medical aid using incantations. This applies only if the healer does not mention the name of a deity in his incantation. If a deity is mentioned, one must die rather than allow himself to be treated. Accepting treatment from a healer who is a heretic is always prohibited, as it's presumed that he will invoke the name of a deity in the course of his treatment. So this is Maimonides and also the Shulchan Aruch. So Maimonides 1100, Shulchan Aruch 1500, roughly. So that's the law. Being treated by heretics is worse. than being treated by a Gentile. And heresy is different. There's a note down here. If one receives effective medical treatment from heretics, there's a concern that he might begin to trust them and their philosophies. Others add that heretics must be avoided more than Gentiles because they consistently attempt to persuade the masses of their convictions. So Gentiles don't proselytize, heretics do. Okay. All right. The master said above, you did not transgress the statement of your colleagues who would state the verse, and who breaks through a fence, a snake shall bite him. The Gemara asks, but Ben Dama was also bitten by a snake even before this declaration of Rabbi Ishmael. So how can he be considered fortunate? The Gemara explains the snake mentioned in the curse of the sages is different as it has no remedy whatsoever. Although Ben Dama was bitten by a snake, he could have been healed. The Gemara asks, and what would Ben Dama have said? What verse did he intend? Right, what verse would he have chosen to prove that you can get help from a heretic? What verse did he tend to cite as proof that it was permitted for him to be healed by a heretic? The verse, you shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man do, he shall live by them. This teaches that one should live by God's mitzvot and not that he should die by them. This verse serves as a source for the halacha that one may violate a prohibition in order to save a life. Right. So the verse, you shall live by them, the mitzvot, and not die by them, is one of the proof texts for seeking help to save a life, and that preempts all other mitzvot. You can violate Shabbat to save a life. You can violate kashrut to save a life, etc. Okay, so maybe Ben Dama was going to quote that, and so then how would have Ishmael responded? And why does Rabbi Ishmael disagree with Ben Dama? He maintains that this matter applies only in private, but in public one may not transgress a prohibition even to save a life. There could be a different, so it depends on, so there's a Hanukkah story where somebody refused to eat a roasted pig that the Greek general was trying to get him to eat. And the idea was it was going to be a public display of eating treif. And so even though you can eat treif if your life is at risk, the difference is if it's private versus whether it's public. So Ben Dama out in the field, outside, is public, and he should not have allowed a heretic to heal him. But if it was private, it would have been okay. As it's taught in a Baraita, the Rabbi Ishmael would say, from where is it derived that if oppressors say to a person, worship an idol and you will not be killed, that one should worship the idol and not be killed? The verse states he shall live by them, and not that he should die by them. One might have thought that this applies even in public. Therefore, this verse states, and you shall not profane my holy name. So that is, you can't profane God's name in public. Okay? And there's this halachic, there's this note about in public, and the Aramaic word for that is farhesia. When one sins in public, he desecrates the glory of heaven simply by the fact that he knowingly transgresses a prohibition, regardless of its severity. Furthermore, since others witness his transgression, they may also come to transgress the same prohibition. Okay. So now we go on. Now the red S. Michael, what are you about to say?
Practically,
Yes.
modernly,
Yeah.
that would make it very difficult to take somebody to a hospital on Shabbos because by definition you're in public.
Okay, so yes, so Michael's saying, well, you can't take someone to a hospital on Shabbos because that's public. No, it doesn't apply. There's rabbinic ideals and then there's practicality.
Right.
No, so Jewish doctors work on Shabbos, Jewish surgeons. It's not a question, even if it's public versus private. So no, it's it's not a question. Even this idea of not going to a heretic or a Gentile for medical advice or medical treatment also doesn't apply today. All right, but we have to understand the context and how Jews lived until modern times, as second-class citizens, as an outsider, as those who are treated as different by the majority Gentile, Christian, Muslim public. And throughout our history until modern times, Jewish life is always considered to be in danger and threatened. We don't understand that, but we know that our grandparents or great-grandparents fled Eastern Europe because their life was in danger, right? So it happens, but in America, it doesn't happen, and just another example of how we, as Jews, we take our Jewish life for granted in America. So yeah.
But I thought you were reading a halacha, but that's.
The halacha also is from the Middle Ages. Yes. So it's not, it doesn't apply to life in America. It might be a question. I don't, look, in a time of war in Israel, it might be a question as to whether you can go to Hadassah Hospital to get treated, because there are Israeli Arabs there who are working on staff as nurses and doctors. So would this apply in this situation during a time of war, when Israel is fighting Hamas, Palestinian Arab terrorists? Does one assume that the Israeli Arab surgeon working at Hadassah Hospital, does one assume that Israeli Arab surgeon is a Hamas terrorist? There are some Jews in Israel, some Israeli Jews in Israel who would, and but I don't know if it's practical to say, when someone's being transported and taken out of an ambulance on a stretcher, if a family member is there, can the family member say, I don't want an Israeli Arab surgeon to be treating him? I don't think that that's practical to do. And I think even in that situation of a time of war, those working for Hadassah Hospital who are not Jewish should still be trusted as following the Hippocratic Oath. So it would be an interesting. So it's not an issue of, first of all, Arabs aren't Gentiles, and they're not heretics. So that's another thing. So there are no so Gentiles are pagans, not people of another religion. But Buddhists or Hindu might be considered pagan. So then the issue then is just an enemy, and can you be treated by an enemy? Right. So yeah. So it's interesting. Okay.
Jonah?
Yes, Marlene, go ahead.
So I just wanted to comment. So I thought that you can violate any Jewish law except for three, right?
Yes.
Idolatry, adultery, and murder.
Right.
And so if you're fearing that the Israeli Muslim might, I don't know, I guess, spout his religion to you, and maybe it falls on that category. But if not, if you don't have any fear that they're gonna say anything about the religion, then there really shouldn't be a problem. Right.
Right. Yes, that's right. But it's just I'm trying to find a circumstance that what we're discussing here would apply today. And so the issue, so there's great fear of Gentiles that comes through the Mishnah and the Gemara. So that's clear. And that is based on real life situations in which Romans are Gentiles and they killed Jews and oppressed them, and right. So that it's real life to assume Roman authority applies to all Romans that you come into contact with, because the Romans are teaching through their laws and through their practice that it's okay to kill Jews. So the average Roman might be considered as someone who's out to get you. So that this law would then apply. Can you really trust a Gentile when your life is threatened? Whereas today, the issue is whether a person who is not part of your society is out, you're at war with them. Could you be treated by those same people who are living in your country? So Israel, in its unique geographic situation, has Arab nations around them, and then have also Arabs amongst them. So this raises issues. I mean, the fact that Jews in towns, I won't call them settlements, in towns in the West Bank have been attacking Palestinians in the West Bank is awful and disgusting, but it stems from this idea of Jews retaliating for what Hamas did on October 7th. That is, those Jews attacking the Palestinians are assuming that all Palestinians are bad, not just the Hamas terrorists who are in Gaza. So, so then by extension, then the Israeli Arabs, that is the Arabs of Israel who are citizens of Israel, right? The Palestinians in the West Bank are not citizens of Israel, but the Palestinians who are citizens of Israel, how do Jews, Israeli Jews, deal with Israeli Arabs? And that's something that Israeli society hasn't been able to deal with, because Israel has constantly been at war with terrorists, and they haven't had necessarily the luxury to try to work on the ills of society. I'm giving Israel the benefit of the doubt here. And so I'm sure there are some Israeli Jews who, when they go to Hadassah Hospital, are wary about the Arabs who are on staff there, and it's jarring to them to see an Israeli Arab doctor treating their ultra-Orthodox relative or something like that. So the issue isn't about Gentile. The issue is about the presumption of someone out to get you. Okay, so let's go on a little bit. This next red S. The Gemara examines various circumstances in which one is permitted to receive treatment from a Gentile. Rabba Bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says. So the same Rabbi Yochanan before about being treated by a Gentile. With regard to any injury for which Shabbat is desecrated, one may not be treated by Gentiles. Right? So somebody gets hurt on Shabbat, or somebody is ill on Shabbat. A Jew should violate Shabbat. One may not be treated by a Gentile for that. And there are those who say that Rabbi Bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, with regard to any internal injury, one may not be treated by them. So the question is, what did Rabbi Yochanan say? You're injured on Shabbat, can you be treated by a Gentile or not? Or is it only an internal injury? The Gemara asks, what is the difference between the two versions of Rabbi Yochanan's statement? There's a difference between them with regard to the case of one who was injured on the back of the hand or the back of the foot. As Rav Ada Bar Matana says, that Rav says, injuries to the back of the hand and the back, that is, the top of the foot, are like an internal injury, and one may desecrate Shabbat for their treatment. Let's just look at the halacha here. First, an injury for which Shabbat is desecrated. One may not accept treatment from a Gentile for any injury or affliction that is severe enough to permit the desecration of Shabbat, unless the Gentile is a well-known and reputable physician. This is in accordance with the first version of Rabbi Yochanan's statement, following the explanation of the Rif and Rashi. The Rosh and Tur rule that it's also prohibited to accept minor medical treatments from a Gentile, such as bloodletting, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, and there's a note, an injury for which Shabbat is desecrated. This refers to any injury or affliction that is potentially fatal. It makes no difference whether it poses an immediate danger to the patient's life or might evolve into a dangerous malady over time. In both cases, it is permitted to desecrate Shabbat to save one's life. Okay, so the type of injury the Gemara is discussing may determine whether it's something that can be treated by a Gentile on Shabbat or not. And Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia says that Rav is from the same generation of Rabbi Yochanan, with regard to any injury that requires a medical evaluation to determine whether or not it is fatal, one may desecrate Shabbat for its treatment. Rav Shemen Bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and a burning fever is similar to an internal injury, and therefore one may desecrate Shabbat for its treatment. The Gemara inquires, from what point on the body is a wound considered an internal injury? Rabbi Ami explained, from the lips inward. Rabbi Eliezer raises a dilemma. With regard to afflictions located in the gums or teeth, what is the halacha? Do we say that since they are located in firm parts of the body, they are similar to external injuries? Or perhaps we say that since they are situated within the mouth, they are similar to internal injuries, right? So is a toothache or a gum ache considered internal or external, right? You just lift your lip up, then you can see it. Even though no matter what you do, you can't see your stomach unless you open your body, right? Abaye said, come and hear a proof from a Mishnah. One who is concerned about pain in his teeth may not sip vinegar through them on Shabbat for medicinal purposes, as it's generally prohibited by rabbinic law to perform acts of healing on Shabbat. Abaye infers it's only when he's merely concerned about pain in his teeth that he may not treat them, which indicates that if it hurts him greatly, it is permitted to seek treatment. The Gemara rejects this inference. Perhaps the Tana also characterizes a situation where it hurts one greatly as one of mere concern. So the idea is, what is the cutoff for treating or not treating something on Shabbat? So it has to be serious, but serious is in the mind of the patient. And if it's serious to the patient, then it's serious enough then to be treated on Shabbat. The Gemara suggests, it's 10:20. Why don't we stop here for today, and we'll continue next Sunday. Remember, the next Sunday, we turn the clocks ahead. So just be forewarned that we might be a little bit tired next Sunday. So we are here on the top of page 149 for next time. Okay. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.